And action! Welcome back to Glenn's Hot Rod Garage. We're here to introduce a new series that I'm going to present to you. And it's going to be called Hot Rodding on a Budget. Something like that. So, what qualifies me to share with you or produce results of following my advice? It's the first question we'll ask today, and from there we'll get into some other things. But from the age of 10 or 11, been into hot rods. My uncles had a hot rod auto repair and they drag raced back in the early 80s. And I used to read Hot Rod and Carcraft magazine starting off. I was always inspired by my uncles and my dad. They always had cool cars. My one uncle had a 68 442, a 67 Cutlass, which later became my dad's. My other uncle had a 67 SS Chevrolet with drag race. My dad had a 57 Chevy, a couple different Oldsmobiles. Some of my uncle's friends were involved in cars too, and it was just a cool time to grow up because they were racing in like the early 80s. So, I can remember as far back 5, 6 years old, a badass black 68 442 with a big black Chevy coming down the street and getting all excited about it. So this stuff's been in my blood since I was not in diapers, but a little bit after that. However, I did come home from the hospital in a 57 Chevy with a 327 Cross Ram and the 4-speed. So, this stuff's been going on for a long time, over 50 years now. But that's not what qualifies me. It's just the start of muscle cars and hot rods being instilled in me as a child. So, back in those days, there was no internet. All we had was Hot Rod magazine, Carcraft, and that stuff was pretty cool. We'd go to car shows, hang out, listen to the older guys bench race and talk stuff, But I think wanting to build cars has been in my blood for a long time. What I used to do was we would take paper and write out how much it would cost to build a car. We'd come up with a price, like we picked this car up, just say a 68 Chevelle at the auction for $500, which wasn't out of the extreme back in those days. And then we would break it down: chassis, engine, trans, interior, Then we go in the magazine and look at all the parts and write down what everything cost. And we'd end up with a sub-categorized build cost. And I can't remember what it was back then. And I didn't know all the parts or all the operations of what you had to do. I was just a kid. But those things craft you into the person that you are today. So I do all that stuff in my head now because I've been doing it since I was a kid. Let's fast forward to say 1987, 1988 when I first got my driver's license. Pops had a 77 Caprice Classic with a 350 Corvette motor. It was quadrojet, dual exhaust, had all 60s on the back, Corvette rallies. It was a pretty sweet ride. It ended up being mine. But He let me take it to the high school nationals when I first got my license. He thought we were just going to watch. Yeah, right. It ran like 1640s. It was pretty cool. It was fun. It's a good way to get my feet wet. I dialed 1599 and I ran 1645 three times in a row with the car, and I still dialed 1599 and lost the first round because I couldn't run the number. Oh well, that's how you learn, by doing it. So, I used to work at my uncle's shop after school, and we'd work on stuff, and that's where I picked up quite a few of my bad habits that I have today. But yeah, I got a job when I was like 19, 20, working at a factory, and I was making, I don't know, 14 bucks an hour, 10, 12, 14 bucks an hour, which wasn't nothing back in those days, but I picked up a 72 Nova from a guy across the street for like 500-600 bucks, and it was my daily driver. It was a 307. It had a power glide in it when I got it, and when you'd go to use the downshift, the transmount was broke. It would do all this funky stuff, and I had a turbo 350 I threw in there. It had a shift kit in it. B&M Torque Master, torque converter, and dual exhaust. It didn't have headers on it yet, but it started off running like 1550, something like that, on street tires. This was back in probably 1993 or so. I raced that for the first, I think it was like a half a season. I raced at Detroit Dragway, and slowly did some upgrades. Put a Cam Dynamics cam in it. It was 480 lift, 284 advertised duration, so it was like 228, 230, somewhere in there. I left the other converter in there. By the end of the year, I met a friend of mine, and he was upgrading his car, so I ended up buying his 10 bolt. It was a 410 and ran 1479, I believe. And my first season, I finished in third place 3 times, got some money. It was pretty cool. So over that winter, I upgraded and built 350, 360 it was. It was 60 over 350. 11-1, camel humps, 292 Magnum cam, just the famous, hot rod, a 350 full bolt main build. Guys make fun of them these days on Sloppy Mechanics and stuff like that, but yeah, 750 double pumper, put a 10-inch converter in it. Actually, I put the 10-inch converter in there, and the 307 was still in the car the following spring because I was still building the new setup for it, and I got the car to run 1452, the stock 307, 130,000 miles on it. I'd be driving it to work and go around a Cloverleaf to get on the freeway, and the oil light would come on, and I'd know to put a couple more quarts of oil in it. So it was the following year, opening day, I had the converter in it. I took some weight out of the car. I was starting to get set up for the new engine, and I ran 1452 with it. And every pass after that, the car would get slower. And this was at Lapeer Dragway. I did an awesome John Force burnout and shot up to the starting line. As soon as the car hooked, the whole bottom end fell out of the engine on the starting line, made a mess everywhere. It was a bad situation, so we pushed the car back. They brought out a garbage can full of Speedy Dry. We're kind of trying to help them spread it out while my buddy was going to get the trailer. And we backed the trailer up to where the car was. Nobody would help us push it up, so I started it up and pulled it on the trailer with a hole in the oil pan. It was pretty hilarious. We didn't go back there for a long time. Anyways, the new engine was done shortly after that, and I got the car to run 1250s with the next engine combination, the 11 to 1 360 with camel hump heads, and you know, that was good. I couldn't race all the time because I worked afternoons, and it was hard to get out to the track, a lot of weekend overtime and stuff. So laziness got me. Lesson learned, Michigan. You're supposed to not have antifreeze in your car when you take it to the drag strip. But when it gets cold out and you just have water in your engine and you forget and it cracks the block, that kind of puts a damper on the thing. So after that, I built a 84 Buick Regal. The girl that I was dating at the time assembled the engine. Was a stock flat top 327, 30 over. It had 305 HO heads on it and the L79 350 horse cam. A Holley dual plane, a Contender intake. It was a copy of original Z28 370 horse intake. And that car had a 270 gear in it or something. Started off running 1530s in the quarter. The first time I took it to the track, it ran 1530s, and I came in third place. It was like pretty much the first time I ever drove the car, so that was pretty cool. Later on that, I upgraded the run to 373 Posi, put Mickey Thompson Sportsman tires on it, got the car to run 1410 back in the day. And that year I finished 5th place at Mile and Dragway bracket points. And I was able to go to Indy, where I cut my first ever perfect reaction time. I didn't go any rounds there. I lost in the first round, but it's still good experience to say that I won or got my first perfect reaction time at Indy. So after that, that was a daily driver car. I drove it to Indy, I raced it, I drove it to Milan, I drove it to Detroit. We took it to Savannah, Georgia. I raced it in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, I believe. 8th mile racing, couple classes. Then finished driving to Savannah, drove it back. That thing was pretty cool car. I got rid of it later when I was working on my Nova. I had too many projects going on, and after that, I purchased my next car, which was a long stay. I don't know if you guys can see this. It's a No Respect Chevy Nova. Bought it from a guy named Harry Marks. Him and some good old boys used to race it at the track. It ran 1220s. I got it. It had a 327 in it. I put some exhaust on it after I got it. Paid $1,800 for it, and it had a rod knock. So a friend of mine at the time, Eric, had a tubbed out Nova, 70 Nova, I believe it was, and he had a 353 in it, and I bought that off of him. I believe he had his car running 1090s. It was tubbed out, ladder bars, 1432s on the back. Can't remember the trans, but I got the motor from him. I took the heads and had them ported at Rhino Racing, put the engine back in there, little port work on the intake. Bought a Pro Systems 4150 carburetor, ordered a Cohen custom for my application torque converter, put it in there. And through the exhaust and street tires, I was running 1120s with it. I ran 1115 with it on a really cold day. It was practically snow now at Lapeer. And that was when Detroit Dragway closed in 1997. And after that, I was like, I'm not going to be able to go to my drag strip every weekend. And fastest streetcar racing just started coming up. So I was kind of inspired to take that direction, and I built a Stroker 350. It was 365 cubic inches. It was 350 over 40 with a 3 5/8 stroke crank in it. Had Ross pistons. It was like 13-1. I had the Dart Sportsman heads on there still. Same cam that I had in the Nova before. In the meantime, my friend Eric I was speaking of earlier was mini tubbing the car and putting a nice cage in it, because the cage that was in the car wasn't that good. You had to look like this out of the window to see the tree, and it looked like it was arc welded and everything else. But the car wasn't that fast then, so it didn't matter too much. And I believe we switched it over to ladder bars at the same time, and that combination ran 1089. I think I had some more port work done on the heads and put a Super Victor intake on it, and 165 rockers, got the valve lift up. It was 695 or something totally ridiculous. First pass, it ran to 1089. Couple passes later, I blew it up. One of the epoxied in trash screens in the block vibrated out and got ground up in the gear drive that was on there, and filled the engine with particles that jammed up the oil pump, and the motor smoked. And that seemed to be a trend. I learned all my motor building issues the hard way, very expensive way. So we fixed that again, and I was driving it on the street, and it was in the colder months, and I needed gas, and I put pump gas in it, and it detonated, and it beat the rod bearings out of it. So I was pretty much done with that motor. No, one more iteration. I was gonna put the car in easy street, and I got a used flat tappet easy street cam from a gentleman named Norm Roll, who was an easy street racer back in those days. And I put that in there after I fixed it. I think I had the crank turn and all that stuff fixed, and reconditioned the rods that were bad or whatever needed to be done to fix it. And I put that cam in there, and it ate it instantly. This goes back to probably the early days of cam failures from not having zinc in the oil and all this stuff, probably 2001, somewhere in that era. So that motor was bad, and ran into a rough patch of employment at the time. So the car sat for a long time, and I started building the new engine, which was a 377 D-stroke 400. Still more engine problems. Here's my takeaway from all them troubles. If you don't know what you're doing, pay someone who does know what they're doing to do it, and only do it once. Well, I took that advice on the last iteration of the 377, and the guy welded the oil pump pickup on the oil pump with the wrong welding rod, and the car ran at 1066. Very next pass, I was racing and the oil pump broke off, and halfway down the track, the engine totally destroyed itself. Oil out of the oil pan. I felt it car wiggle a little bit. Luckily, I saved it from getting into the wall or anything. And here's a word of advice for you guys. If you run into that situation, as soon as it's safely possible, ease over towards the guardrail and let the car slow down a lot on its own and then hit the brakes. Because if you get in your own oil and you hit the brakes, it's like ice. So the school of hard knocks. I survived that one, and here's a picture of what that car looked at that time. We're talking 2007 when this picture was taken. I think it was a year after that or so, because I was rebuilding that engine every 10 passes from different hard knocks of life, lesson learned. So, my next project after that was a while later. I got rid of that car. I fell upon some hard times, and I was kind of sick of building a motor every 10 passes for it, and I didn't have the money for that. So I traded the car for 68 Camaro, and I never built the Camaro. I ended up selling it. I ended up buying a 85 Mustang. I started working on that, and kind of lost interest. I'm really not a Ford guy at heart, so, and I sold that. Then I picked up a 84 Regal, fell in love, needed the money, was gonna buy the girl I was dating a ring. Turned around, sold the car. I actually probably made money off of that deal, but whatever. So then I started getting my stuff together. In the meantime, I was doing odd jobs, side jobs, working on hot rods. I was involved with a couple cool builds, a 67 Camaro that ran 1089, letting off at 1,000 feet on its first full, semi-full pass. 9-inch tire, leaf spring, big block, naturally aspirated. It was a friend's car that I had a lot to do with part selection and building. I also was crew on a Nostalgia Pro street car that ran 770s at the time. I was involved in building a 71 Pontiac Ventura with a Pontiac engine that ran 1060s, naturally aspirated, leaf spring, drag radial, slicks kind of deal. And then my next project was the 67 Le Mans budget build. If you go back 6 years or so in my archives of YouTube videos, there's kind of in-depth review of how that car was built on a budget. I never got to take that car to the track because I happened to cross my Cutlass and I needed to sell it to pay for that car. I borrowed the money to get the Cutlass, and I didn't feel right owing the money out, so I turned around and sold it right away. I actually broke even or made a little bit of money on that car. It was a 400 Pontiac, flat tops, 062 Pontiac heads, Crower, hydraulic cam. Ended up with a single plane torquer intake on it when I sold it. When I was driving it, it had a Performer RPM with a 700 double pumper on it. Car ran pretty good. It's got the 12 bolt in it that's in my Cutlass right now, and it had 430 gears in it at the time. It was probably 1230 car or something like that. No money. I mean, I think I might have had 5 grand in it. I never really tallied it up. I tallied up the first part of the build, but I didn't tally up the second part of the build. And I managed to sell the car for $4,500 and keep the 12 bolt out of it. So, I did pretty good on that. In hindsight, I wish I would have just stuck it out and kept that, because I turned around shortly after that and bought my S10 project. So, the first iteration of that was just whatever motor was in there, and it was a street car. Put some rims on it, it had 350 in it with the Edelbrock carb on it. I sold that. Put Holly on there. Used carburetors, probably another subject that's hit or miss whether you're going to get lucky on that or not. I'd say two out of 5 used carb purchases are not good. So buyer beware on carb purchases. So that took me through another year, and then I rebuilt that car with my uncle, and to the point where it is now. I got a 350 in it, 355. I bought some Brodix Dragon Slayer heads for it, and it's got a hydraulic roller cam, Holly contender intake, same one I used back in the day, 750 AED carb, Jugs converter, turbo 350. They came with the truck. One of the only things that still remains on it, it works good. Don't mess with it. There's a review video of a lot more detail of the S10 project. That thing's super ultra budget. The engine, I bought a package deal of stuff off a guy off of Craigslist, and I used a short block, and I sold a bunch of the parts that came with it. And even though I got $1,000 in the heads alone, I think I paid a golf cart for getting the short block machine work done. I ended up putting some flat top pistons in there and stuff. My buddy Scott, and the thing runs pretty good. I need to get that. That's one of our good projects here on the channel. So the Cutlass, the '67 Cutlass. I drove to Green Bay to get that car. I paid $38.50 for it, plus whatever it cost me to go get it, which I'm not going to count that in the price of the car. But the car was a basket case, and it had a bunch of awesome parts. It had seat covers, chrome plated bumpers, all this stuff. It had a 350 Olds in it with a Turbo 400 Olds trans. I sold that. I sold the bumpers. I sold the interior. Guys, I'm telling you, I sold some other stuff also. And I'm not into the car for anything. And actually, I think I probably made a couple dollars off of it so far. I can't remember all the stuff, but that's a good tip for you. If you want to build a car, find something that's a basket case or a project with a lot of parts. And even if you're not going to use those parts, you can use them to trade for other parts or sell them and make money back to recoup your investment. It really helps on doing things on a budget. So, so I bought the engine that's in there off a guy on Marketplace. It was a 454. It had been running in a truck, and it was fairly built up. I went and took a look at it. I turned it over. I pulled the plugs out and looked under the valve covers. It had roller rocker arms on it, Holly 850 intake, chrome valve covers, roller rocker arms, if I didn't say that already. And I paid $1,200 for it. So I took the front end off the Olds. I painted the engine compartment, cleaned up the front frame, painted that, put disc brakes on it, and took the engine apart. I was gonna try to just put it in the car and get it running, but I was doing my due diligence by taking it apart, and it needed to be rebuilt. It had some pistons from a previous build. Some of them were damaged and stuff, and it was 12 and a half, 13 to 1 engine. So at that time I figured, well, I'm going to probably drive this thing. So I'm going to knock the compression down, get a fresh bore on it. And we ended up throwing some new connecting rods in it. The crank was able to be polished. That stuff was all balanced, and the heads were still good. I put new valve springs on it. The cam was still good, so I reused that. It's a solid lifter cam. I put new rocker arms on it. An intake I had from a previous build, which was a Victor 454O, which was able to be changed later to the proper Edelbrock Performer RPM air gap, and I threw it in there. Drove the car around a little bit. The first season I got it out in October. It ran 1274, and it was the first time I was ever down the Pier Dragway, and I kind of let out of it, and mile per hour is a little low, so we know we didn't make a full pass with it. So then last year we made it back out there, and I ran like 1175 with it after changing the gear and putting a better intake on it for street use. And that's about it. I know I'm going over my projects a lot, but from this you can tell some of the things, how I like to do it. And I want to bring value to my viewers in this channel, and my direction is to, we'll start with an ugly street truck. I'm not going to spend a lot of money on this. I mentioned in one of my lack of motivation videos that we're going to throw an LS motor in there and the Turbo 350 that was in the truck, and do a budget build and take it out to the track and test on it. I mean, hot rodding is what you want it to be. It could be a street car that you like to beat on, do burnouts, and go get ice cream, as Matt Happel from Sloppy Mechanics says. It could be drifting. It could be road racing at a place called Waterford Hills track, somewhere local. I'm more towards the drag racing and street strip kind of deal, and we're going to bring you some builds that reflect and my budget terms mean just being conscious of what money you're spending. The ugly street truck is super cheap. It's going to be less than $4,000 to start. I may go back and refine that after I accomplish that goal. Something else, we can just make a hot rod out of anything. I got an 86 Pontiac Parisienne with a 305 in it. I'm thinking about using that as a weekend bracket car. And that would be super low budget. And we got the S10, we got the Cutlass. My plans are, that's a higher budget build. I'm still going to be crafty with how I'm doing it because I'm not a wealthy man. So I'm starting that build from the frame up. However, the car is still one piece right now. Once I get the frame done, we'll take the car apart and take it to the next stage. So follow me. Subscribe. I promise to make these videos and bring you a wealth of knowledge. Please interact with the channel, subscribe, all those good things. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next week. Peace.